Shane Robitaille has been wrestling with words since he was a teenager. Fortunate to have been published in books, magazines, journals, and the digital world, he is inspired by underdogs, adventure, rebels, music, sunrises, sunsets, and people who try to make a positive dent in the universe. His most recent collection of poetry is called Punk Rock Soul, and his newest project is writing and directing a new independent video series called Snapshots of a Teenage Punk Diplomat. When not working or writing, Shane can be found hanging out with his daughters, going on adventures with his girlfriend, throwing a tennis ball for his dog, Hershey, or going on long-distance treks on his bike. Please welcome everybody, Shane.
All right, so let's take a little quiz here. Pretend we're in school. If we were to visit a kindergarten class with 30 kids, let's pretend you guys are them.
Yeah.
And I were to say, raise your hand if you're an artist or a musician. You're in kindergarten. Raise your hand if you think you're an artist or a musician. Right. How many people would raise their hand in a kindergarten class and say that? Most? We have an agreement? Most people? Overwhelmingly most? Okay. So let's get in a time machine and visit them in 3rd or 4th grade. Maybe 5th grade. Same 30 kids. Raise your hand if you're an artist or a musician. Right? Or probably fewer, right? Now let's visit them in middle school, 7th or 8th grade. Raise your hand if you're an artist or a musician. There's probably no way of proving this, but my hunch is you'd be down to about 1/3 or less of the class. Agree?
Yeah, maybe.
Now let's visit them again in high school. Sophomore year of high school. Same 30 kids. Raise your hand if you're an artist or a musician. And you'd probably be down to small single digits. And then visit them again at 19. Or better yet, let's fast forward to 35. Those same 30 kids, raise your hand if you're a poet, a musician, an artist, a painter. Be lucky to get a couple. So what's happening? So what happens is as we get a little bit older, from the time we're very, very little, we start listening to the world around us, and we start letting the world around us tell us what an artist is, and what a musician is or isn't, and how an artist should look and how they shouldn't look. How a musician, what kind of music constitutes music, et cetera, and these forces weigh heavy on us, and until we become adults, and we don't even recognize those former poets in ourselves, and those former musicians and artists, et cetera. So that's kind of what inspired this particular collection of poetry called Punk Rock Soul. And the theme here is really to allow adults kind of to reach back into their youth and remember those dreams that they had, kind of pull them out of the closet and maybe, just maybe, do something about those dreams. So I'm going to read a couple poems from the collection. The first one's called Dedication. This one is for the old, for the sickly who fight, for the daydreamers who keep wishing, to those without sight, to the ones who tried and gave up too soon, to the ones who soared and walked on the moon, to artists and poets who make sense of it all, to the ones who protect us and always stand tall, to those who bring us light, to lovers we kiss goodnight, to rebels who rebel, to athletes who excel, to mom and dads who make their kids proud, to freaks in the band who make the world loud, to the bold who lead the way, to the heartbroken in cafes, to those who make us smile, to best friends across the miles. This one's for you. Dedication. This next poem's called Lucky Day. On an ordinary afternoon, an old man approached me to say, "Stop for a second and listen, son. This is your lucky day." With Doc Martens and a shock of white hair, he looked like an aging punk rock star. He said, "You don't know me yet, but I know who you are. I have a few questions, he said, if you have a minute or two. I didn't know what to do, or I wasn't sure what to say, and I didn't know what to do. His friendly smile left his wrinkled face. He suddenly looked stern. He reached out to shake my hand. His eyes were ablaze. His grip was firm. Why aren't you going for it, he asked. Why aren't you bold? Why aren't you adventurous before you get too old? Why don't you seek real love in the most unselfish way? And do you make the most, I mean the most, of every single day? Why don't you ever take a stand? Why don't you ask her to dance? Why aren't you shooting for the moon? Why aren't you taking a chance? Why don't you forgive more? Why don't you find the time? Why don't you run the big race? Why aren't you more kind? Why aren't you rocking this world? Why don't you sing? Why don't you run wild under the stars? Where are your wings? The old man paused and smiled. I said, "But how do you know me?" "I'm you in 50 years, he said, "and I've seen how things will be." Don't waste your time, kid. Dream big, live hard, be bold. Find the good and the beauty in this world, and you'll never, ever, ever grow old. "I've got to go now," he said, as he turned to walk away. "Don't wait another moment," he added. "Time is a gift. Seize the day." That's called Lucky Day. I think I've got a couple minutes.
You sure do. Please.
Okay. This one's called Shout. After you shouted so they all can hear, screamed at the mad world to disappear, escaped like a thief for hundreds of blocks, alarmed the malaise like an 80s boombox, ran wild in the pelting downpour so hard, cried just a little and let down your guard. We'll go to the rooftop above the city of ours, take a deep breath and wish upon the stars, until the rising sun startles us awake with all of its new hopes and promises. And that's called Shout. This one's called Colors. In a beige world that demands conformity, uniformity, and blind allegiance to the status quo, those who are still awake crave color. Real explosive color. The kind of color that crashes your party, breaks your furniture, drinks your last beer, stays too late and doesn't apologize for a damn thing. A calming color that startles the pre-dawn sky, opens our tired eyes and softens yesterday's hard edges. A bold color that raises eyebrows, creates vicious rumors and keeps them guessing. A soothing color that washes over us like a warm spring day and reminds us to slow down and breathe. A bright color that illuminates the way when we are lost. A gorgeous color that steals our attention, invades our dreams, and makes us fall in love. A familiar color that calls on a Sunday evening just to say hello. A color who rebels, defies labels, takes us for a walk on the wild side, top down, radio up under a summer night sky, reminding us of our youth and when we were dazzled and humbled by the infinite colors of life. That's Colors. So the last one, I think I'm out of time here.
Okay.
The last poem I'm going to read is called Making a Cooler World. And before this book was published, it was all ready to go. And at the last minute, I snuck it in. And I think I wrote this on International Women's Day a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. And so I dedicated it to my daughters. And in the spirit of punk rock, in the book, the last poem's all handwritten. When I saw a girl with crazy hair and scuffed up Doc Marten boots, stopping traffic as she walked across the busy boulevard, I like to think that she was on a mission to her best friend's house. Or maybe meeting her bestie at a cafe, where they will work on writing their first song, maybe a punk rock song, for their first punk rock album with a band that doesn't even exist yet. And maybe the reason why she looks wildly distracted is because she woke up humming a peculiar beat, and she's preoccupied, humming as she strolls past the midday suits, trying not to forget how it went. I like to think that an old Blondie song popped up on her playlist a few weeks ago, and she couldn't get it out of her head, playing it over and over and over until she took her hard-earned money and bought the vinyl album from the used record store in town. I like to think that her tribe gets pissed off at ignorance in the news of the day, and that their generation is accused of having no soul. And maybe the day's politics make them want to scream from the rooftops, waking up the sleeping city with their raw energy, style, and words that pierce the pre-dawn light and reverberate off of the gray buildings below. As they scrawl their fiery hopes and dreams into cheap notebooks, I hope they stay true to their crazy-ass ideas of a cooler world, and that they block out all the, quote, practical and, quote, sensible people when they tell them that their music is way too loud and that their ideas are idealistic, cute, and naive. And I imagine the smiles on their faces and the glow in their tired eyes after way too many cups of coffee when they finish their last line of their first song, satisfied that they have created something that cannot be contained, something that, once released, will shake the foundations of the city and will make the sleepwalkers open their eyes, wake up, and maybe be dazzled by a cooler world. And that's cooler world.
Thank you very much,
All right,
Shane.
thank you.
I hope it won't embarrass you, but let's just take a quick moment.
Yes.
For those of us who remember the 1980s, all this talk about punk rock, a little bit of the Billy Idol thing going on with this guy. You know, with glasses maybe.
Yeah.
You know?
Christina would have comments about
There you
that.
go.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay.